We're not done with the Trevor Zegras to Montreal talk, as The Athletic posts an article that lists Montreal as the first team they mentioned that should be interested in going after Trevor Zegras. We'll be talking about some more details on these rumors. Plus, we got to talk about your and our favorite prospect, Bogdan Konyushkov, and one source saying he will be in the NHL, quote, very soon. And finally, a note on the single most underrated Hab on the roster this season, all on this episode of Habs Digest. We're going to jump first into the most underrated Hab, Jesse, and that is David Savard. Yeah, I know it's a bit of a surprise. Of course, he's missed, I believe, almost 20 games this season. He had that broken hand after that crazy shift against the Buffalo Sabres. But I saw a post on Reddit today that was like, hey, yeah, he's kind of having a career year. And I was like, well, let me just go take a look at his stats. And they were right. If we look at David Savard, he has 11 points in 21 games, which is over a half point per game pace. Over a full season, that's over a 40-point pace. That's like a 45-point pace, which would, of course, be a career high on a career pace for goals as well. Of course, over the full season would be on pace for about 15. So that's crazy. But not only is the point production at a career best, Jesse, it's also his block shots. Here's the current NHL leaders in block shots per game among qualified players. David Savard doesn't qualify because he hasn't played enough. But you see Cayden Guhle actually right there at number 3. He's really stepping up with that Savard absence for a while, averaging almost 3 block shots a game. But take a look. Trouba's at 3.14, right? And he's leading the NHL. Let's take a look at David Savard. In 21 games, he's at 3.29. He's actually at a higher block shot per game pace than the NHL leader Jacob Trouba right now, while being on a career year in points. Jesse, I feel like he is the single most underrated Hab on the team this year, and I think he's going to be extremely valued by a lot of contending teams come the trade deadline in a few weeks.
That's it. He's playing offense. He's playing defense. He's blocking shots. What I really like about David Savard is he's willing to have the necessary chat with the opposition, from time to time when that's kind of needed for a young team. Really important. He's really kind of stepped up to the plate and in a lot of ways kind of being like that calm leadership kind of role that this team really needs. And it's so true. I'm so happy we're bringing him up because he really has been an unheralded member of this team while he's been here, right? He's really earned my respect every night just by the way he competes, right? The way he puts his body on the line. Not only is he contributing offensively as we've now come to expect, but 69 block shots this year. There's nothing that this guy won't do for this team. It's just been absolutely amazing to see.
Yeah, he's been, like we said, I mean, that shift against Buffalo, you're catching on now. That shift against Buffalo was crazy. But every night, I feel like he gets, I don't think he gets a ton of hate from Habs fans. But I think people look at him and they say, well, why is he their top pairing defenseman? Well, now we got Guhle playing with Matheson, and maybe Guhle could shift to a right D full time. We're not sure. But, of course, David Savard's not a first pairing defenseman in the NHL. But he's kind of being forced into that role with the Habs. They have a lot of young defensemen, and it is what it is. But I think people are giving him unfair criticism for having to fill that role. While on a really good team, he's maybe lower in the lineup. But what he's done with his role so far this season has been nothing short of amazing. So shout out to David Savard. Really, really underrated player. Now we got to talk about another defenseman, but a guy that we all love, Bogdan, as Jesse has coined him, the Bug Dominator, and he is doing exactly that in the KHL. And a recent article on TVA Sport talked about how one source in Russia says that Bogdan could come over to North America in the NHL very soon. Let's have a look. Konyushkov jouera dans la LNH très bientôt. He will play in the NHL very soon, and you can feel free to pause and read this if you read French. If not, I'll give a little bit of a translation. They basically went to speak to Gafurov, DJ Gafurov, a guy over in Russia, and they finally got back to him, and he basically said that Torpedo wouldn't stop Konyushkov from making the jump to North America, and quote, he said, I believe he will play in the NHL very soon. It depends on him. If he's ready, he will certainly play in the NHL. We won't hold on to him. That's not our style at all. And again, that quote, très bientôt, very soon. A little unexpected to hear this. I mean, he does mention later in that, it's once his contract is over, that's when he will go to the NHL. So he is sort of talking about 2026, but it's not crazy to think that his contract could get bought out and he could come over sooner. But 2026 isn't that far away. It's now 2024, guys. I know it seems crazy. But this kind of hype for Bogdan saying, oh yeah, he'll play in the NHL. It's awesome to see, especially for a guy that we really don't hear a lot about.
And why is that? It's because he's ready for the NHL right now. Bog Daddy is ready to go, right? So you have to think, if you're Kent Hughes, you're thinking about this right now. And if there's anybody that can get him out of his contract even before 2026, trust former agent extraordinaire Kent Hughes to make that happen. To be honest, I wouldn't even be completely caught off guard if he did, right? I think he's recognizing the value that this player could possibly add. Are we looking at another Jaden Struble type, just kind of waiting in the wings, right? Like this guy's averaging the fourth amount of ice time right now in the KHL as such a young player. Like this is unheard of. You really don't hear about this. And not only is he playing well defensively, but, Torpedo, the team that he's a member of, they're encouraging him to play offensively as well in the neutral zone. This guy's playing all over the place. So this guy's really getting the experience that he needs for when he comes over here. This guy's going to be ready to go. So this is a very interesting asset of the Montreal Canadiens to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for sure. And I believe Torpedo also has one of the top prospects in this draft. I believe his name is Silyev. I could be getting that wrong. I think he's a 6'7" monster, 17 years old, doing some crazy things on that team. Such an interesting team to follow. But yeah, Bogdan, I mean, he has just been so good. The point production, while he started off extremely hot, has cooled down a bit. But again, he was the captain of Team Russia for a 3-on-3 tournament. He has leadership skills. He can score with the best of them. And he's had some of the most responsibility in the entire KHL at the age of 20 years old. So really awesome to see that they have him hyped up, but also us here too, because yeah, I think there's great things to come for Bogdan. Final topic today is more Trevor Zegras stuff. And I know, are you guys tired of it? Well, I'm not, because it's Trevor Zegras. I think I've said that the last couple times we've talked about him, but it's so exciting to think about. And while, again, we'll just open the segment by saying I don't necessarily think this is a done deal, or in fact, it's far from that. I don't even think Pat Verbeek is currently looking at trading Trevor Zegras, but he might be listening to some offers. But, here's the thing. It's not just us making up these rumors saying Trevor Zegras could come to Montreal. The Athletic posted an article today, and they listed Montreal very early. Shayna Goldman, fantastic article, by the way. It's not just Montreal in this. Go check it out on The Athletic if you're subscribed. Trevor Zegras trade scenarios, why the Ducks would deal him, 6 teams that should call. And the first team they mention as a team that should call is the Montreal Canadiens. They say the Zegras trade brings so much intrigue because he appeals to so many different teams at different phases of the contention process. And they say a rebuilding team like Montreal could gain an edge in the process because they likely have the cap space for him. And they also have future assets they could deal that could appeal to the Ducks. Montreal is one of those potential rebuilding fits in a position to take big swings for skill, just like it did with the Kirby Dach trade. They go on to say that they don't need Zegras to even be the number 1 center. He could be the number 2 center, or they don't say this here, but he could play wing, which is something he's done a bit in Anaheim. There's a lot of versatility, a lot of places he could go in the Habs lineup and really add to that scoring depth. He would add long-term potential to Montreal's young core, even with some of the flaws, but time with Marty St. Louis could help him find his ways to elevate his skill. And yeah, I mean, hearing this makes me a little more convinced, Jesse. And at first, what I thought was just kind of like, oh, that'd be fun, right? It'd be fun if Zegras went to be with his buddy Caufield. I mean, now it feels like it's getting more and more real by the day. And if Anaheim really doesn't see Zegras as that star of the future, and they can get lots of good pieces for the future to kind of build up a nice, solid, complete team around the guys they have, like Carlson, like Gauthier, like McTavish now, I'm starting to feel that it's even more in the realm of possibility than it ever was before.
It is, right? Because the Ducks, they got some guys for their top 6 right now. So it makes sense that they would look at some options. But Trevor Zegras is not the player that the Montreal Canadiens need. I know your doppelganger, Cole Caufield, might disagree with me, but I really feel it's like when we're making our acquisition for our next top 6 player, which Kent Hughes talked about his midseason press conference yesterday, somebody that he is looking to add in the future. This is not lost on him in any type of way. I think Kent knows that this needs to be a sure shot. We can't have a player that could be good, that's streaky. In my opinion, we need to have a proven, consistent, bona fide, and dare I say, even a little bit experienced goal scorer, to kind of balance out some of this team, right? I don't think that, there's great counter arguments to really go either way. You could say like, okay, well, we need offense, and Zegras can provide, offense, and he's a young player, could kind of go with that core as well. I think kind of just balancing it out, though. I don't know if culturally he's exactly that fit. I just feel like for me, when we're getting like our top 6 is now starting to get crowded. So when we get that player, there needs to be no doubt of what this player can kind of bring in, year out. It's not a position. It's not a player that we can afford to kind of really mess up on this stage of the rebuild. So when we're doing it, we got to make sure that 100% that this is a player that we know we can count on for, 30, 40 plus goals every year. Of course, Zegras, he'll probably get there, right? He's a good offensive player. I don't know if he's exactly the player the Montreal Canadiens truly need.
Yeah, and I'm on board with that. I think again, there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding him, especially his lack of defensive game. But at the same time, he still has that game-breaking potential offensively. But I think you're right. But I also think it depends on what the Anaheim Ducks would ask for and what Montreal is comfortable giving up. Of course, Montreal has a plethora of draft picks and a plethora of left-handed defensemen, especially that could be moved and could be of interest for Anaheim. And if the price is something that Hughes is willing to part ways with, I know Zegras is sort of on a bridge deal now to take him to his last year of RFA eligibility. It might not be the most ridiculous thing, but again, like you said too, maybe getting a guy on a longer term contract, even if it's through free agency or through a trade, whatever it may be, having certainty in contract numbers, especially as we talk 3, 4, 5 years from now, after you're going to have to pay Slav, after you're going to have to pay something like a Hudson, something like a Reinbacher. Having all these young guys' contracts come up at once can put you in a bit of a jam, right? So there's a lot of question marks around Zegras for sure. And I think we're both on board saying, like, I don't think this is something Kent Hughes is necessarily gonna do because there are so many question marks around it. But I think if the cards fall the right way, I think if everything falls into place, I'm just gonna say I wouldn't rule out that possibility. But we'd love to hear from you guys below. What do you guys think about Zegras? Would you like him on the Montreal Canadiens? I think a lot of us would be pumped. I think if tomorrow we opened the news and we saw he was traded, I think we'd be super, super excited at the possibility of Zegras here. Not to say we wouldn't be, right? But I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think? Zegras or no? But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. On the road to 15,000. And I'm just going to pop up the graphic now. I didn't do it in the video. If you're still watching now and you're part of that 53% that's not subscribed, hit subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. I'm Josh Goss, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.